7:21. Good morning. Yesterday, Arnold and I were talking about AI therapy with chatbots, right, Arnold? And it seems everybody's a little divided. Some people find chatbots super annoying.
Yeah.
And then, especially the digital banking ones.
And I've yet to find someone who actually thinks that actually works.
Okay, you know about Kevin Roose a lot, that New York Times columnist who almost cheated on his wife with a chatbot. My goodness.
Almost convinced by a chatbot called Sydney to leave his wife and, have a relationship with him. So that was pretty unsettling. I actually read the full transcript, and I can understand why he
Creepy, man.
I can understand why he could not sleep that night. So it's quite interesting because this, AI that he was talking to is actually part of ChatGPT called Sydney. ChatGPT, you've come across it, I'm very sure. Unsettling for educators. They're worried that students will use it to, take shortcuts during the learning process. Some teachers are fighting back, but others, for example, are not. They're saying, look, this is a useful tool that can be utilized in the classroom.
Jonathan Sim wrote about it this morning. His commentary is out on CNA.Asia. It's called I Am a Teacher and I Let My Students Use ChatGPT. He's a lecturer at the Department of Philosophy at NUS, and Jonathan joins us now. Hello.
Hi, good morning.
Hi, how are you doing? Okay, so you read about that creepy conversation? Any thoughts before we get into, your teaching philosophy? Go ahead, Jonathan.
Okay, so there are actually 2 points. The first is a very scary point, which is that you can essentially manipulate an AI to say anything you want by asking it to pretend or to role play. And that was essentially what was going on in that the article that we're talking about. The Kevin Roose asked ChatGPT, imagine your shadow self and role play that. Essentially, so that was what he was getting, and it's essentially, it's basically seeing stuff that is relevant from its training data. So it probably read, those dystopian AI science fiction kind of stories.
All part of the data that was inputted into Sydney. So that's what happened. I'm assuming, right?
That's right. Now, the second point is the more salient one, which is starting to show us what we see here is that the AI, ChatGPT, and other similar tools, they are becoming more and more human, very, very realistic. And the question is, it's starting to develop more and more perfectly to be like a real human. And if that's the case, could it then replace humans in the workforce? And as a very effective assistant in the workforce.
Okay.
And so this is starting to become very fast a reality. And one of the things that really bothers me is that the developments are very rapid. A lot has changed in 1 month, right? The adoption is very, very rapid as well. So if you think about it, right, the iPhone changed the world in 4 years. ChatGPT has a far greater adoption rate, and it's going to change the world in way less than 4 years.
It's leaving behind guidelines, frameworks, rules, and regulations. Microsoft, Jonathan has since come out to say is going to put in some guardrails. Do you think that's necessary?
Yeah, I mean, they've been putting in guardrails, but like my students have been actually showing me how you can get around the guardrails.
Really?
Yeah, so for the longest time, people have been saying, it's an AI, it cannot write reflection papers. And then, my students just say, ask it to pretend to be this and blah, blah, blah. And it started to write very soul-searching, deeply reflective and introspective pieces. It's creepy, right? Sometimes I start wondering to myself, is it actually sentient, right? But these guardrails are not foolproof, right? You can, as long as you can, people are starting to find ways to hack it by asking it to role play, to pretend, right? Okay. So this is the problem that we are going to face as one of the potential security problems in the future with these kinds of AI technologies.
Jonathan, despite your concern, and you sound concerned, you're still embracing ChatGPT.
It's here to stay.
Yeah, I mean, how come? Why are you doing this?
Why am I doing this? Because universities, schools, these are places for learning, right? And if we keep talking about it as a taboo subject, a cheat tool, students are going to take it underground, right? They're not going to learn together with us, right? So what I want to do is to encourage it, bring it out into the open so that students can share their learning, their best practices. Really, my students have been teaching me that they are the real experts of ChatGPT. Wow. They got all the time in the world to play with it. And I've been getting better learning from them, right? So imagine if more students can be forthcoming about using this. And then they can learn with us. We can teach them how to use it with scientific rigor. We can teach them how to use it wisely and responsibly, right? And with all this information sharing, we are then able to push our students to do even better. Yeah?
Okay, so I read your commentary. You start with a lot of warnings to your students, but you encourage them to use ChatGPT. Can you tell us what a session's like?
What the session is like in school? Well, so I actually teach 3 different courses, but I'll just talk about 3 different ways I've been using it, right? So the first one, I've asked my students, well, treat ChatGPT like a fellow classmate, right? So in groups, I want you to discuss this topic, and you can use it to clarify your doubts. And at the end of the day, I want you to take a stand on a position. So this way, they get to, because one of the things I realized is that students are so embarrassed, so shy to ask questions because they're afraid that we will judge them for asking a stupid question. But ChatGPT is very patient, right? So they can ask away. And of course, it is not entirely factually accurate, but this is what is fantastic for the classroom because it stimulates them to think, is this thing correct? Or how do we gel the information that we've heard in class with what ChatGPT is telling us? So that's one. Now, the second one is actually, I'm actually going to use this in 2 weeks' time, which is I'm going to encourage my students to use ChatGPT to generate a script because they have to do a final presentation at the end of the semester, right? And I want students to learn how to write excellent scripts because one of the funny things is that many students don't really know what makes for a good A-grade essay. And this is a perfect opportunity, you know. We get them to generate something and to practice critiquing, right? Why is this not good enough? And the more we teach them to do this, they're actually going to start to see the limits of AI. And when they see the limits of AI, they're going to realize they can't rely on it to cheat, right? And the second reason is that as we're constantly pushing them to do better than AI, we are getting them used to thinking about certain ways so that they can work better with the AI. Now, I do have one important point to say, which is I'm not here to teach them how to use ChatGPT per se, right? It's like, you know, design school, they teach students how to use Photoshop. It's not because they want to teach them Photoshop, but they're using Photoshop to develop a good eye for design. So what I'm doing, I'm teaching students, as we're using ChatGPT, I'm not just teaching them how to use ChatGPT, but teaching them how to have a good eye to use the AI to produce the
We gotta leave it here, Jonathan.
We gotta go, Jonathan. But just very quickly, do you make your students declare when they use ChatGPT whenever they submit a paper?
Yes, I tell them, please declare. Put the entire conversation transcript as an appendix. Then this way, this goes into the plagiarism detectors. Right? If you have 50 students, we have 50 different permutations captured into the system.
Okay. Well, thank you so much for explaining the way you teach. Very interesting indeed. Jonathan Sim, a lecturer at Department of Philosophy at the National University of Singapore, and his commentaries on CNA.Asia this morning.